We're going to be going through this little presentation here, and then we're going to be starting with the discussion. This is the how to find the hidden revenue in your customer base with Margo and myself, Margo O'Neill and myself. It's hosted by us, Balboa. We are a company that does consulting for various different companies, help people with Pendo as well as understanding customer data that they have coming in for their systems. And so if you have any questions on that, you can send a message to myself or Jonathan. And then I wanted to give a brief intro to Margo O'Neill. She's a director of revenue systems at Resorts World Las Vegas. She has 35 years in Las Vegas hospitality and joined Resorts World in 2022. 20 plus years in MGM Resorts Digital Ventures, and is an experienced integrator for the enterprise revenue and e-commerce systems. Margo, I'll let you, if you have any other things you want to add to your introduction, and then I'll introduce myself.
No, thank you. Thank you. That was very kind. Thank you. Not much else
Yeah.
to add.
There's a lot more to add. Margo is an amazing person. This is going to be a great discussion. And then there's also myself here, Keith Wagner, co-founder and CTO of Balboa. I have over 10 years experience in product operations and product, and I just really built my career around finding some hidden value in customer data, specifically customer usage data of how people are using products. Something I get really excited about. And so working with Margo on this project, I was one of the people who helped with this project. It was one of my favorite times in my entire career. There's a lot of awesome things that we did. And that's actually what we're going to talk about. So Margo, I'm going to hand it over to you. If you can just give us a big picture. What's been going on in the last 6 months of your life at
Yeah.
Resorts World?
Yeah. Last summer we did a pilot with Pendo and Balboa. And once we got through that pilot and decided to move forward, we really hit the ground running in January. We had some brief discussions last December about what our goals were. We had use cases already specced out and documented, and it was really attacking a plan of how do we set ourselves up for success. So there was a great amount of time and effort put into tagging pages, setting up events, understanding what can be measured, and getting as much as we can exposed so that then we can start making sense of the data. And that's really what the last 6, 7 months have been about. But there's been some interesting, and we'll get into them a little bit later, nuggets that we found along the way that turned into real revenue opportunities.
So I think everybody understands what Pendo is here, but just in case you don't, it's an application that can track user analytics. So as people are using your product, it can see how many people clicked a certain button, how many pages they went to, and a lot deeper insights as well. And that's what you were piloting is
Mm.
setting up Pendo to allow for seeing the usage around your site. And
Yep.
could you give a brief overview of the specific application or
Yep.
applications that this was put on?
Yep. It was put on our main retail website, RWLV, RWLasvegas.com, in case you want to visit. And it was put on our room booking engine, which is a separate domain. It is now being put on our app, both iOS and Android. That's nearly done. And we are looking at possibly putting it into a source system. We have some use cases for our point of sale, so not necessarily guest facing, but employee facing, as well as working towards getting data into our data warehouse.
Yeah, so if anybody does want to see one of the sites that this was put on, it's just rwlasvegas.com. Really cool site. Really fun to kind of, it's just because this was something exciting for me because I helped out with this and this is something that I might use, in my daily life. I started my career in the dental industry and I was never somebody who worked in a dental office. And so it wasn't anything that was as exciting, but this one was fun because I could be a consumer of this site. So if anybody does want to go onto that, you feel free to go onto the site. We'll be able to see traffic coming through. But I wanted to talk about how, Margo, you had said in the past how there was this sort of decision making was done a lot on gut feel,
Yep.
right? There was a lot of intuition.
Yep.
There wasn't as much data to utilize. And so it had to be done in that way. And I'm curious of how the change was made, how the suggestion was made to start tracking more data.
Yeah. I think that at least in Las Vegas, where you have the highest concentration of hotel rooms in the world, right? All of our sites tend to look similar and do similar things. That they're not very distinctive, and everybody knows everybody, and everybody's worked everywhere. So when I first started working on digital products years ago at a previous employer, and we were building a new website, corporate website, it was leadership led it. This is what we want on the site. And after that site was built and then we rebuilt it, I moved into a product role in a new division called Digital Ventures. And I said, it can't be just what leadership says. First of all, that's not fun. We would find insights and nuggets and say, hey, we should do this. And that's sort of where I heard of these tools and software. And then life moved on and I came here to Resorts World, and I said, look, if we're thinking about making meaningful changes, we should look at this product. It will help inform the changes we want to make. It will validate the assumptions we have. We could test something first now. And so it really changed the way, and I'm lucky that my leadership understands that and embraces it, and values it.
So I'm curious. So this was made, right? It's really about changing the culture rather than just getting data, right? You wanted
Yes,
to
yes,
change that culture to make sure that people were making these decisions based off of something,
yes.
right? Now, after implementing this, is there something that made you the most excited? Like it's something that made the most impact from what you saw and what leadership saw?
So a couple things stood out. Was we had launched a summer campaign in March, this previous March, and it was something, and it was for hotel rooms. Summer is always hard in Las Vegas to fill your hotel rooms, and so we wanted to launch early. We wanted to launch before our peers, and we knew they were going soon, so we got ours out, and we did something different. And thank you, Keith. Keith helped set up all of the tracking for this for us, and we did something different for each brand. We have three brands under our roof, and we did something for each brand differently than just saying the entire property is 20% off, right, for the summer. So we did something different. But the thing that stood out is that we had this luxury package that nobody had ever done. It was sort of not quite an all inclusive, but it was a good bundle that nobody had ever done. But people weren't booking it. It was the highest driver to our room booking engine from our main site. But why are they not booking it? Which is hard. And you could make an argument, and probably if I didn't have the tools that I have, would have made this argument myself that the price point wasn't right, because it was higher, because it had $800 worth of value for $200, $300 more than the regular room rate. So there was question of, is it too high? Is it too high? And then we said, well, let's see what we can find in Pendo. So I started watching sessions and stitching together so I could watch guests physically from our main retail site, from our promo page, click on this offer, get into the booking engine. What are they doing then? Are they picking another offer? No, actually, the offer they wanted wasn't available during the dates of stay they wanted. Our summer offer, while it launched and you could book starting in mid-March, actually didn't have stay dates until after Memorial Day. And I could see guest after guest clicking on April and May, wanting to book in those dates, and they just weren't available. So we had made a decision, well, let's take our summer offers and back up their start dates so that they can stay coming in April and May. And while the more expensive Conrad Complete offer didn't take off like gangbusters, like we thought it would, the rest of the summer offers did. And we were able to start laying down a really good foundation for our summer months that allowed us to hold what we call hold rate, and build a base and not have to, tank rate, and be reactive. It felt very proactive. to do that. And it was a huge win for us. We probably would have come to this conclusion, but much, much later, right? Instead of just a week later, it would have probably been a month later. And we would have said, look, let's just try and back up these stay dates to inspire guests to book. But again, that's a gut feel. We purely went on behavior
Yeah.
of guests.
I got a question, Margo.
Mhm.
I think I know the answer to this, but what would you say your favorite module is that you got out of Pendo?
Oh, recession replay for sure.
Yep. Yeah.
100%. It is
From this
time
story, it makes
consuming,
sense.
but it's fascinating and it's interesting. And there are things in there, and we'll dig into them, that are just come out of nowhere that you wouldn't even expect. And some of us who are work in, especially me in digital products, this is me, I can look at it 1,000 times and I don't see those outliers and anomalies. If I tend to, when I test, take the happy path, is it
Yeah.
working? Is it up? And so this really uncovers things that I'm blind to, and my peers.
As a point of context for anybody who's not familiar with this module, the session replay is a module that allows you to view individual sessions, what people were doing, where their mouse was moving around the screen, what they were clicking on, and you can view the entire session. And it's really, really useful for exactly what Margo was saying with that story is you found that people are trying to do something and they can't do it. And it's really hard to find that with just click data, right? You can see what they clicked. You can't see where their mouse was moving and what dates they were looking at just from what did they click. So it's super useful to be able to find that. And that's exactly what this whole discussion is about, is finding that hidden value. Now, I know you've talked about this in the past, Margo, of validating like leadership's assumptions before like cutting what's working. Can you give us some more insight on that? Because isn't I think it's kind of
Yes,
in some ways step one.
it is step one. So we have if you look on our room booking engine and our main site, we have multiple offers for rooms, all flavors for each one of our brands under our roof. And we do have one particular rate plan. It's called Signature Savings, and it is full retail rate. It does not have any discounts associated to the rate. It does not have any inclusions, like a food and beverage credit. And there's always been assumptions that guests do not, that we've conditioned, and at least in our market, to that you're going to get a discount or you're going to get something with your rate, to incentivize you to book. That guests are price sensitive and they will not book a retail rate. So this is where it really comes in as sort of that hidden is I was asked to look at some session replays to correlate data to behavior of an Expedia guest. We have some data on that. And it's an expensive channel for us. So do guests behave the same on our site? So as I was looking through session replays, I went through about 150, and of confirmed bookings, 85% booked this full retail rate. The majority of them didn't even look at another offer. When you had an offer sitting right next to it that had, a discount message, a food and beverage message on it, uh, my great peer, our director of digital marketing, Abel Garcia, he has been advocating that this rate books, this rate books. He knows it does. But we were really having a hard time proving to leadership that we shouldn't get rid of it because folks wanted to get rid of it. It's cluttering up all of our offers. They're not getting to the offers that they really need to book because it's cluttered. And we were able to prove, no, guests are booking it, and they're rapidly booking it, meaning they're not spending any time searching around for a best rate. They know the dates they want to stay, they click on that and they book. And when we did some analysis on what does that mean to us if we were to take it away, take it down, and it roughly came out to be the average order value was about, just on the room portion, without taxes and fees, was about 50 plus dollars, $59, I think. But that equated to $135,000 a month in revenue. So if we took it away, we would have been losing that. So it was impressive, and I think I actually jumped up out of my chair when I was like, oh my God, I can prove that people are booking this.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So you found that it seemed like some people had made up their mind that they wanted to go to Resorts World.
Yep.
And it didn't really matter that they got a promo or whatever
Yep.
it might be because they had already made up their mind. And so you're still capturing those people so they don't have to go sit through, okay, which promo do I want? Is this better than
Yep.
another thing? You have a path directly for them to
Yes.
get exactly what they want, which is what they've already decided on.
As a matter of fact, this exact rate plan came up yesterday because we launched our fall campaign and folks wanted it moved into that first slot on our booking engine. And we said, no, it's not moving. We have pure data that shows guests
Love
book
that.
this and they book it at a higher rate. It stays where it's at.
This is an interesting part about your industry in terms of finding people who like indicate or that they want to make a purchase. And I'm curious about purchase history is like a lagging indicator, right? You know, if people have purchased this in the past, they might be more willing to purchase something in the future. But what's some leading indicators that you have been capturing and that you're excited to capture? And
Yeah.
what does like an aspiring to purchase look like
Yes.
right now?
So we, because we have three distinct brands, historically, we have treated offerings, promotions, campaigns, sort of the same across all brands. But they're very different travelers that go in each one. We have the more, the Hilton Tower is for those price sensitive folks. The Conrad brand is a highly elevated experience. And then you have Crockford's, which is ultra luxury, white glove, butler treatment, private entrance, things like that. So three very distinct brands. And they don't purchase the same things and the same way across all three. So that was part of our summer campaign is let's start treating them different. Now that we're starting to elevate our Conrad brand and really try to get people into there, we've started developing personas in our product in Pendo. And if their last room purchased was a Conrad, what else are they doing on our site? We find things that they look at the higher end restaurants with greater propensity. They linger on our spa page longer by over a minute than other guests may. They surprisingly don't look at concerts as much as the other ones. But what it does for us is it tells us, or if they come back to these things over and over again, they may not book that restaurant, but they keep coming back to it. And it really gets us to a point where we can become even more targeted and strategic with what we offer to these different types of guests. I mean, ultimately, the ultimate goal in this city and probably the whole hospitality world is to be able to market to just you, Keith, with
Yeah.
everything you like, and we know what you want to do.
I think this is a perfect thing for multiple organizations to utilize as personas because
Mm-hmm.
you get to understand not just the average of how people are doing something, but you get those pockets of information.
Yeah.
This kind of person is going to purchase in this way, this person in this way. And one of the interesting things that I remember finding when we were doing this project is that most of the personas what we found is that they did their research on their
Mm-hmm.
mobile device, but
Yep.
actually did the purchasing on the desktop. They actually went on a computer to do that. I thought that was super interesting. And that helps you understand of if somebody's on their mobile, they're normally looking for a different experience. They're looking for something that allows them to compare prices as easily as possible. When they're on the desktop, they're looking for a more streamlined service to get the things that they've already researched. In most cases, right? Is that something you're seeing as well?
Yes. 100%. We had some data uh, that guests did display that behavior, but this even further validated it and cemented it. And so we wanted to ensure that when we did make changes, that it supported that behavior and that we weren't putting up any roadblocks and we were reducing as much friction to get them to convert as fast as
Yeah.
possible.
Something else we saw just in a lot of different organizations is the like a low-hanging fruit is the repeat views, right? You don't always have people booking the first time they get onto a
Right.
site, but seeing that they're coming back means that and probably that they went out and looked for other prices or looked for other
Yep.
offerings, maybe in other places, and they were still interested. and coming back and seeing this, which is a really good indicator of showing that, hey, what we are doing is working. We might
Yes.
not capture every single person, but the fact that people are going and looking elsewhere and then coming back means that we are doing something right. And so having that data for all of your personas is extremely important. Is there any other persona data that you have set up or are excited to set up that you think is going to make a big splash?
Yeah, we concentrated first on Conrad. We had had a directive that we need to elevate. If folks don't know, we're the largest Conrad in North America and possibly the world, I think. We hold, it's over 1,000 rooms, and over 50% of Conrad's North American inventory is in under our roof. So it's a lot to move. And so we wanted to concentrate on that first. But now that we have some learnings from that, I've started to build the shell for the Hilton persona, um, to see if we can inspire those guests to buy up, keep their money on property. And the Crockford's guest is a little bit different. We are tending to lean that towards more our casino guests, but we are getting learnings from our Genting Rewards guests. We are able to uniquely identify them once they log into their account. So we really know who you are. But ultimately, I think what we want to do, as I mentioned, is get the Pendo data into the warehouse. We're working towards that right now and marry it with source system data so that we can say, okay, Keith, I've seen what you've looked at on my website and maybe not made a reservation for, Kusanori, our Japanese restaurant.
Yeah.
Did you actually go there? Right. And if you didn't, what did you do when you were here? And how, if you never had a meal here or charged it to your room, or I couldn't find that information, how do I get you to stay here to do that next time?
Yeah, with what you have, it's a whole ecosystem of offerings.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times when people look at these, they might think of it as just a hotel, right? Like, oh, I get a room. But with the resort, you have the rooms, you have the restaurants, you have the shows, you have the pools, you have the spa, everything. There's like so
Yes.
much more that you can list out. And I think it's important for not only internally for you to understand what offerings you have, but make sure that every person getting onto the application understand what's available. I
Yes.
remember a time where I helped an organization do some analytics on a brand new feature that they had. And it was something that they were really excited about. And we found that their feature had a huge retention rate, as in, like, people would continue to come back to that feature and the application much more than if they used any other feature in the application. But only 5% of the users had even tried out this new feature. And we came to the conclusion and we found out that people just didn't know it existed. There were some marketing things that came out, but people had been trained to not look at pop-ups as clearly, and some of the pop-ups were very wordy. It wasn't like a lot of images with it. And so people didn't even know it existed. And so being able to change something based off of that data, finding that there is a high retention with this is a good feature. We just need to improve how people understand that it's there. And so with yours, is there anything that you have done or are planning to do to make sure that all users find the things that are important to them?
Yeah, I am a pop-up adverse person. We've had this conversation, you and I, Keith.
Mhm.
Like, I just don't want too many pop-ups. It's irritating to me, so it's probably irritating to other people. But I think that if you use them strategically, and where necessary, they can be very effective. One of the examples that we have actually came out of our trial. When we did that long proof of concept, which was we had built a feature into our booking engine. It sits right on top of our, right above our calendar with our rates, and it's called flexible dates, right? But what does that mean? Like, sometimes guests didn't even know that they could click on it or needed to click on it. And that was one of the things that we saw through session replay. And our hypothesis, so there were two goals out of that. One, that if a guest interacted with it, that we would get a higher conversion. The second would be that we can drive them into the lowest rated days, right? It was easy to compare all three brands across each other, almost like a little Excel table, right? Brands across the top, dates down the side. And so it was very easy for them to get in. And when we put up a little tiny guide, the software pen we use will draft the message you want if you tell you want to do. So we had something crafty like, "Shoo, it's an industry secret. Look here," to get the insider rate. And we saw a 12% increase in engagement with that feature. Now, there was a quarter of a percentage maybe, and that sounds very minuscule, in conversion compared to other retailers. But in my world, that can lead to real dollars, just this small amount of engagement and lift.
Yeah. Now I want to switch over to some more Q&A. We're about at the time where we can open it
Yeah.
up. Um, and I have a few questions I want to ask in this section as well. So if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat. We will get to them. Margo, just as a really quick housekeeping thing, if you can turn off your video and then turn it back on, it seems a bit delayed from your audio. See if that just fixes it. But what I wanted to talk about or ask you, Margo, is in 3 sentences or less, what would you tell someone who says we don't have time or we don't have the team to do product analytics?
I would say you if you dive into this knowing that it is a bit of an investment in time, and folks don't. I'm a team of one. I mean, I get help with my peers. They do help, but I'm a team of one, and it will it will prove itself. And I'm working right now on building a team because it has proved enough that now there's potentially resources financially freed up to allow this to unlock even more through the data, get more revenue.
Yeah.
It's
What what I
informing new products.
what I like to say to people is you can't lose sight of the users. Those are your customers. Those are the people that you're selling to. And the day you lose sight of who you're selling to, you're not building a product anymore. You're just clocking into a job.
Yes, yes,
And that needs to be understood at the highest levels of an organization is that the users are the most important part. And being able to see what they are doing and run those analytics, extremely important. Now, there is a question from Hannah, I see, of if we can say a bit more about how users' behavior can be connected across sessions, devices, and browsers. This one's a really interesting question, and it becomes a lot easier if you have authentication. So for applications where you log in, if you log in on one device or log in on another device, then it obviously is going to be tracking and you can track that person across those devices. And then Pendo, it makes it really easy because you just have them as the same user ID and then it's tracked across all places that that user ID is seen. If you don't have authentication, it becomes far more difficult because you have to have something to latch onto. And sometimes that can be done through cookies and other things like that, just to get an idea of where they're coming from. But it really depends on the application you have and what information you can pull about who that person is or about their sessions that they have. Because in a lot of cases, Margo, one of the challenges that you have to deal with
yep.
is a large portion of users that are going on to a resort marketing site are anonymous. They don't log in.
95%,
Yeah.
95% of our visitors are anonymous. Now, you've helped us, make them known, right? Like what can we do to track these people? And so
Mhm.
we've been able to do that, but the overwhelming majority
Yeah.
are anonymous.
And I know that there was a big push in part of this, and this is one of the things that I know you're still working on, is
Hmm.
a push to get people to join your rewards program.
Yes, yes,
And that makes it really easy. A lot of people do this for other places. Hilton, I know, has a rewards program and things. And people a lot of times want to log into those. And they want to use those logins when they get on rather than do this like anonymously when they're browsing. Being able to push people, even while they are just looking at information, is crucial to making sure that you can track them across
yes.
their devices. And I really like, Suzanne, what you said about how that's a trend in your generation, how you use the big internet for the actual purchase. I've never heard it
Yes,
said like that. I love it.
I'm part of that. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Oh, same thing. Yeah. So anybody else, please put any questions. I have a few more, Margo, that I want to ask as well.
Sure.
Um, and what tools or systems are you stitching together to get that data? Like what was hard to build? What was easy to build when you were putting this together?
So it was easy um, to deploy on our main marketing site, our room booking engine. It has been a little bit more challenging to get it on our apps. Not because we can't. There's I think there was technical underlying things with how our app, iOS and Android, were built, and so we're working on that. But when we stitch, so I want to do it more, right? So today, I mean, literally today, we're working on getting it on our pool booking site. It's a separate domain where you can, book a cabana or book your day bed out at the pool. We made a large investment in the spring into the pool, so folks are very anxious to see, you know, our guests, interacting with that.
That's
Um,
one of the fun things, Margo,
yeah.
of this business is like that was one that we talked about is the pool
Hmm.
thing. And it's not even thing that I thought about. Yeah, you have a pool section of your app, but it is an important part.
Yes.
That helps people to make the decision and it helps people who are already there to
Yeah.
enjoy the time that they're there. And it's something that, at least from my perspective, I wasn't expecting as such an important point.
Yeah, and and with the pool, it's interesting because it's seasonal, right? Our pools
Mhm.
close in October. They don't reopen until March-ish, mid-March. And so what is the thing going to be in the wintertime? And then we can now become even more strategic digitally uh by season, which I think is
Yes.
important because
And you get to see, yeah, you get to see like the activity because I remember we looked at this and I was one of the people. I went to Resorts World earlier in the year and the pool was closed.
yes,
And I remember still looking at the pool section of the site to
yes,
determine if it was or not. And that was, and we looked at the increase, the chart that just kept going
yes,
up, and it went up a little earlier than I think we anticipated in the
it
year.
did.
Yeah,
It did. It really did.
having data like that's huge.
It is
Um,
huge. I have an ultimate vision. I saw while researching websites a couple years back. I saw a website in Europe. It was Switzerland, somewhere like that. It's a skiing destination, but they were also a nice summer destination, and you could actually toggle on their site things to do in the summer and to do in the winter.
oh.
And I would ultimately like to get to something like that. One of the things that are challenging here in Las Vegas, at least, is getting guests to book further out. Get your base on the books way further out. Our current window is about 30 to 45 days, which is not ideal. Some of that is, conditions in the market and things like that and in the world, but also it's been like that for the 30 years I've been in this city, even more so now that you have the Expedias of the world and things like that and the internet, and you don't have to lock your stuff in way far out, but you want
Yeah.
them to, because it helps you grow your revenue and your ADR.
Well, I have another question. You said this was a 3-day pilot that you were going to do with this user data coming in,
Yes,
and you turned that 3-day pilot into 4 months.
yes.
What use cases actually convinced the skeptical leadership and yourself to continue with that pilot?
It was a couple of things. One was when we were first told, okay, we'll give you a 3-day pilot, and I said, well, that's not going to really work for my area. That you just couldn't gather enough data to make any meaningful argument, right, for the product out of 3 days. So I said, can we do a month? So then it wrapped into a month. After the month, as we started uncovering things, one was that flexible date feature. The other was getting through. How long does it take someone to get through a booking in the booking engine? It can be clunky at times. We saw some behavior on our calendar, our room calendar, that was discouraging to guests. That was a source of rage clicks. So we
I,
started making improvements.
Yeah, I think you also saw for that flexible date feature, was it a 12% increase in engagement?
12%. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, things like that.
Yes.
Not only being able to take actions, but be able to see the actual percentage increase of those actions. Like
Yep.
that's a
And one of the
huge part
big
of
ones.
this.
Exactly. And one of the big ones, and this is what actually got me to extend it another month, finally into almost that 3.5, 4.5, or up to 4 months, was we were getting ready for a very large downtime, not just to the booking engine, but our whole central reservation system was coming down, and Opera was going there was going to be outages across the board, right? And so people wouldn't be able to book. And we didn't have historically messaging that articulated that well to a guest, either on the main site or on our room booking engine. So we were able to, I said, please let me go another month. Our use case was to reduce call volume to our call center, which is resort services here on property, because that's expensive right out the gate. As soon as they answer that phone, it becomes a very expensive call with labor and things like that. So I said, let me use this and deploy it. I was actually able to build it. The downtime was on a Monday night. I built it on a Friday. I scheduled it to deploy. It went up perfectly fine. And we did see a reduction in calls. Very little guest aggravation or complaints, or, obviously if somebody has to book right now, they're gonna call right in. But we clearly explained what was happening and when we would be back up, or the anticipated uptime. And it was measurable. That was another item that helped sort of convince leadership there is more than just some data.
Yeah. Now, do you mind if I share the website really
Sure,
quick?
sure.
So we have like Resorts World, right? This was just so fun to look at all these things in terms of like how do we determine the success of things like the Book Now feature and other things.
Yep,
But I know that you put a lot of effort into specifically the booking engine,
yep.
and I'm curious of how you. This is our flexible date feature that you mentioned, but I'm curious of how you find what's important when you have so many different touch points like with this one, how did you go about looking? What was the first thing you looked at, and how did you come to that conclusion of that was the first thing to start researching?
That's kind of a difficult question because we had a lot of data. We tagged, as well, we tagged just about anything that was taggable on a page to understand how guests are articulating. One of the things that
Oh, Margo got muted for me.
unmute, sorry. Um, One of the things we just sort of took all the data and started to is anything standing out, right? I mean, I just started as simple as rage clicks, or what are they are interacting with the most. And if you can see here on this page that there are multiple CTAs to sign up, right, or sign in. Well, they're only engaging in one, and that's the one in the upper right hand corner, right? To sign in. To sign up, they may engage here, um, but that's real estate that I could be using. I could move the sign up next to the sign in, keep it in the upper right hand corner. I think that guests are very accustomed to go to the upper right hand corner, sign up, sign in, whatever it is that you need to do to manage your account or profile. So
Yeah,
I want that real estate back. So we started looking at that. These three pods for each property here or tower, we felt as part of this building out the Conrad persona, um, that there's not enough information here for the guest to understand what's the difference. If I don't know the difference between Hilton and Conrad in the blink of an eye, then I'm going to go for the cheapest rate, right.
yeah.
So we
Now,
started added guides there too.
there was another question that was asked by say James Larson. Do you have a lot of these sections of your application, right? There's a lot of data that can be pulled through and a lot that you need to sift through. Now, the question was with the amount of data that you have access to, it can be overwhelming and the quality can be suspect. What are your recommendations for assessing the quality of the data and whether you have a sufficient amount of data for meaningful, actionable insights? And I think that's a great question. And it's something that we at Balboa deal with on a daily basis of making sure not only that you have enough coming through, but you also can trust it. And the biggest thing to make that successful is making sure that people understand where their responsibilities lie with the tool, right? You're a team of one, right? But teaching others and enabling others to understand how to use the data helps them to recognize if there ever is a problem. Because just like any other application, as you make changes, it can break things. It can break not only your application, but it can break the tracking to that application. And if people are not enabled to understand what to look for when they're going into the application, it can be hard for those to surface. Now, Pendo has a lot of tools that can actually surface some of those problems itself. They can recognize that, hey, this is dropping significantly if, like farther than it used to. There could be something wrong with this and give you something to look for. But that's a big one. And then just audits on a regular basis. Just having somebody who understands the data, who can go in and say, oh, okay, this view rooms button is not working as we would expect for this reason. Now, there's a lot of foundational approaches that you can do as well, such as making sure you have tags in your code and everything that don't change. Just all those housekeeping things will make the future of your usage significantly easier. I don't know if you have any comments on that too, Margo, of how you have so much data to go through and how you make sure that it's the right data.
It's I will tell you it's overwhelming at times. And or I don't quite grasp, I'll be honest, what I'm looking at, right? Like, well, is it meaningful to me? I don't know sometimes. What do I do with it? I feel like something's here. Do I need more or different to flesh that out? Um, but we're slowly getting there. I think one of the things that will help us is getting it into our warehouse and marrying it with other things to help give even more context. And
Yeah, there isn't.
I'm stretching the Pendo folks. I just spoke to them earlier this week that one of the things that isn't available, but they're very interested when I brought it up is, let's work smarter, not harder, which Pendo definitely does help you with, but how are we doing against industry benchmarks, right? So can I add to the software? It's got little AI tools built in. Can I tell it what my industry benchmarks are, and then you tell me when I'm over indexing or I'm failing miserably, and you know what are the recommendations for that?
Yeah, comparing against benchmarks is a really big one because you can find anything that's very unexpected
Yes,
and pinpoint. Another thing that I always would recommend for new organizations doing this, existing organizations, is make sure that you set up communication channels. And that specifically is, it's very often that there's like a champion that really uses the data extremely well, and other people are just getting into using it, and then they get stuck. And if they have to go through a system where they have to put in a ticket, wait a week, go check back on that ticket, see an email come through, by the time they get their issue resolved, they don't even care about it anymore. They moved on to something else. Setting up a way, especially in the beginning, for people to ask a question on like a Slack channel, even calling somebody just in the moment will help the usage. That helps everybody to get through that really hard part at the beginning where like imagine if you shared if you hired somebody on Margo and you gave them access to Pendo
yeah,
and with nothing else, they would get on and just deer in headlights, right? There's just so much to do. And Pendo does a good job of like, organizing it, but where do you start, right?
yep,
Being able to ask somebody, oh, I have a question about something. I don't know if this like where to answer it. Maybe then being able to call you and be, oh yeah, it's here. That helps them to get enabled much quicker rather than waiting for like a training session and other things like that, which are still important.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a few minutes left. If anybody has any other questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to them. I do have another question for you, Margo.
Yeah.
If you have any other examples of hidden revenue, I mean, that's what this whole discussion is about. If there's anything that you anticipate finding in the future, it's something that you're looking at.
Yes. Two things. One is anticipatory, and the other is factual. And this is really where sometimes you need to phone a friend. And my friend was Keith, and he was helping us. He was out for a workshop. We were just launching our summer offer, but we said, "Hey, we are really challenged on our the checkout page of our room booking engine. It had a severe lag to it." And we didn't understand why. We had multiple vendors get on a phone and try and work this out. A lot of finger pointing, a lot of, well, we always do this and don't have a problem. But Keith introduced us to a functionality within Pendo that is sort of the health of your page. How is it performing? And he was able, when he showed us this, he was like, "Hey, there's something here." And he helped us drill down. It happened to be an ad pixel for Reddit. And we were able to uninstall, reinstall it, and that lag 95% went away.
Yeah.
And I was able to quantify by comparing the previous 3 weeks worth of bookings to then 3 weeks after it was resolved. And depending on how you want to measure it, our average length of stay here is 2.3 nights. But I said, I'm going to make an assumption that these people, one night booking, right, that we've gotten in a lift. And it was 500,000 to over a million, depending on how you
Wow.
want to measure it in increase in revenue and conversion. So it was
Yeah.
extremely significant. And then I think that was the turning point, that and the signature savings, right? Being able to tell leadership, you don't remove this, right? Don't go by
Yeah.
gut. Do not do this because you will lose money. Let's hold on to that money. And then the second one is forward looking, is we have actively been looking into building a new app. In my previous life at MGM, I worked on that app and helped to inform decisions made there. And it wasn't done by data. So I said, let's put Pendo on the app. We all know what we want. We think we know what a guest wants. There's baseline things you have to add. They have to have the ability to book the things you offer. But what is doing well on our current app? What is getting traction? Where are they always going? And let's make sure that we build those things first. Out of most of these things are iterated. You don't just come out with a fully fledged product like a big bang. I said we'll do it. We can do it in phases, cost saving, and we save money overall by building, again, going back to your point earlier, what the guest wants and what they want to interact with right out of the gate.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a lot of good future looking opportunities. And I
Yes,
think it shows just that having the help and having, because sometimes you talk in circles, right? You're trying to figure
yeah,
out a problem and you're just not looking in the right place. Is having other resources to help you uncover
yes,
in anything from issues to customer data is extremely important. But you had mentioned that you had talked with leadership throughout a lot of this session in many cases where they were thinking, get rid of this without promotions, like always have promotion thing. How do you disagree with leadership without data feeling like a weapon?
that's a good question. I have always viewed data. I'm a kind of a black and white thinker. I don't live in the gray, and so data has always been my friend. And it I won't say easy, but when you have data, you feel empowered. So I feel that data is my ally, and I advocate for it that way. And I challenge folks, if you have different data that shows otherwise, let me know. Let's talk about it. But when you have people can't argue with that. It's very hard to argue when you have very concrete information and behavior.
Yeah. I have another question because we talked a lot about how data is useful, and I have an answer for this one, so I'll answer that and give you time to think about it. But where has where has the data, or where would you still trust your gut over like the dashboards? And my answer to that is specifically when you're talking to individual users, because no user that you talk to is going to be the amalgamation of the average. They
Yeah.
are going to have a completely different experience from the next person you talk to. And so, talking to somebody, you cannot go into that conversation thinking that they do everything as the average says people do. And so that's my answer to that is there are times where instincts are important, and it's really when you're getting personable and personal with the people that you're selling to.
I agree. I think there's not a lot of gut around our loyalty guests. They behave fairly consistently and predictably.
Mhm.
Uh, at least in the digital space that I see, they get an offer, they log into their account, they click on the offer, and then they book, right?
Mhm.
They will search around depending on other things that they have and maybe look for dates. But I would also say that looking back on at one point in my career, I worked as a revenue manager and had to forecast and use revenue systems. And in Vegas is a little weird where we all have them, but we don't allow those systems to make decisions for us because there are conditions in the market that you cannot tell a system that we just know innately and inherently from living and working in it, right? That that affect decisions that
Yeah.
systems will make. So it's similar, I think, on digital products. So there's just some inherent things that we know. If you, my peer Abel, who is like an extension, the second half of me, fantastic. He knows that the best out of anybody on property. He's really good at that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting this whole understanding that ecosystem, understanding who your customers are and what is predictable versus
Yeah,
what is not predictable. I think I would say most things are, and in some cases it might not seem like that for others, but you find data that backs it up. There is an organization I worked with that did applications for teachers in schools, and it was found in the data that was pretty predictable when you have a new school that was being onboarded, how to get people utilizing that application more. All these schools are very different. All the students are very different. All their experiences are different. But letting them understand or helping them to understand the value seemed to be pretty consistent across
yeah,
all of them. But when you got down to like individual librarians specifically, which was a funny thing, it kind of went out the window because the library in schools are very different across the country, across different schools, across charter schools, public schools, and how they used it became something that was a little less predictable. And trying to find, and maybe it is predictable, we just couldn't find the right data.
yeah.
Digging into that is important to understand when you're looking at this data.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we are at the 5 minute mark. This is just about when we start to do the closeout. And so, Margo, I wanted you to give just a few last comments on data, why you think it's important, and then just the hidden value that you can find from data.
Um, you, you never know what you're going to find. That was the most surprising to me. Is I thought it would start the data would just validate the assumptions we had, or you know say, oh nope, you were wrong. Your assumption was wrong. It was truly, as you're looking at one thing, something completely different crops up that is even more meaningful than what you were trying to sift out, right?
Mhm.
And I would also say, you know, it's not. Don't be afraid. People hear me say this all the time on property, which and this is what data helps you do, which is fail fast, right?
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to try. Be brave. That's my motto. Be brave and fail fast, um, because data will help you do that. You don't need to linger in your problem and let it go on. You learned, it worked, it didn't, move on.
Yeah, I really like that because you can make decisions and take actions,
Yes,
but data helps you to, like you said, fail fast or succeed fast. You
yes,
have immediate data to back up that the action that you took
yes,
either is exactly what you needed or needs to be changed. Rather than, like you said, sometimes it can take a month to come to the same conclusion. And
yes,
so having this data isn't about finding something because you might be able to find it without it, but finding it faster and being able
yeah,
to improve much faster. And like what you said, you never know what you're going to find, That is
You
one of
don't.
my favorite
You
things
don't.
about this. Every time I get into an organization, they think this is the most important thing. And then we're like, whoa, this is data that we found. Let's take a look at it. And we find that something is significantly more important than their
Yes,
assumptions. I love that part of
100%.
it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Margo. This has been
You're
a
welcome.
great discussion. It's great working
Thank you
with
for
you.
having me. I really appreciate it. Great working with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for coming. We will be sending off the recording to this to all the participants and everybody who signed up. If you have any other questions, feel free to email us. Just as a reminder, it's been put on by Balboa. We have others of these every month and some other sessions as well. You can check our website. Jonathan's going to put that in the chat, and then we'll send it out in the email as well if you have any other questions for us. Thanks again,
Before we
Margo.
go,
Thanks again, everybody.
before we go, I just this is a little personal. I see my sisters on, and we don't
Hello,
see
Margo
each other
sister.
often.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining. Join us for next month's session. We'll send that out, sign up for that in the follow-up emails to this. I appreciate everybody for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
Bye.
your time.